7:04 p.m. And Trustee Patel, can you lead the flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Doggett, can you read the land acknowledgement? Okay, we're going to have to stop the echo somehow. I'll start right now.
The Pacifica School District acknowledges that we gather on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. As guests, we humbly extend our gratitude to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders and community. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. As the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of maintaining harmony with nature. Likewise, Pacifica School District commits to teaching our school community how to be responsible stewards of this land.
Thank you. Barbara, will you please take the roll call?
Trustee Burdell.
Here.
Trustee Burkini.
Here.
Trustee Doggett.
Here.
Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Villalobos.
Here. The district digitally records the audio and video portion of the meeting. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted, and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. Okay, the board met in closed session regarding public employee performance evaluation and conference with legal counsel for existing litigation. The board voted 5-0 to approve case number 1. Okay, approval of the minutes for October 13th. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of October 13th, regular Board of Trustees meeting? Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for October 13th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 13th.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable, and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from this section and placed in the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the approval of the agenda and consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. Communications. Okay, speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted, and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. LSEA?
So Carla, you're gonna promote.
Yes, I
Okay,
already.
and our trick now is when it comes time to say goodbye to Megan, we're not gonna kick her off,
No.
right? Okay, Megan?
Hello, hello? Okay. Okay, we good? Okay, all right. Thank you to Trustee Patel for attending our union meeting last week. It was another full agenda with various items discussed, ranging from report cards and unclear COVID protocols to safety and repair conditions at Ocean Shore School after another rain. Today, LSEA leadership had our meeting with district leadership, sharing the issues and emphasizing the low morale of our members. The response was that morale is low in all departments. Let's get some problems solved without more work in committees. Understand there are quite simple decisions that can be made and executed well to help our entire community. This past Monday, we finally had our first negotiation session around an MOU for return to full in-person instruction 2.5 months into the school year. We were hoping it would be quick and easy. While we were pleased with some agreements, simple things to support teachers who directly support students were rejected. Our bargaining team is meeting tomorrow evening to respond to the latest offer from the district. We hope the MOU gets signed off after this final attempt. There are a few very simple $0 requests we hope the district supports. Tonight, our bargaining team chair, Jonathan Harris, will be presenting our sunshine for contract negotiations. We hope the district team can get their sunshine together in time for our next negotiation session on December 13th. If any trustee would like to attend our next meeting, please let me know. Thank you.
Her to an attendee.
Okay, and now CSEA.
Here comes Nicole. Hi, Nicole. You're muted.
I don't think she's not.
All right, now I'm not. Okay, are you ready? Hello, my name is Nicole Sayers, and I am the president of CSEA. I understand that we are holding interviews for COVID-19 health assistance this week, or very soon, but I think it's this week. With that, some of our secretaries will be able to go back to their actual jobs of being secretaries. I know they are looking forward to that. Thank you to all the secretaries for putting extra efforts in on top of your usual responsibilities. We appreciate you. One unfortunate thing is that school staff morale is still low. All I see is everyone putting 110% effort into all they do. However, school staff morale is still down across the board. I see principals teaching classes, some district staff stepping in as principals, teachers feeling defeated because they want to be more successful, and classified staff doing more than ever and not feeling good about it. It may be time to just give ourselves a break and realize that we are working as hard as we can. Forgive ourselves for not getting everything done and be more understanding to each other. I actually recently started hugging people I cross paths with. Now, I'm not a hugger, but my efforts did seem to bring a few smiles. So please do not forget to say thank you. One new thing that CSEA Chapter 128 has put into effect this month is the Above and Beyond project. Members are now able to send our executive board a message letting us know about another member who did something kind or helpful to someone else. Our executive board chooses 2 members a month as recipients of the Above and Beyond project. Those members will then receive a small token of appreciation from the executive board. So far this month, our first recipient is Jose Parada, a day custodian at IBL. I will be dropping off a small gift to Jose tomorrow as I move through the district. CSEA saw a need to recognize individuals as they move above and beyond in a positive way to make someone else's situation or day better. Congratulations, Jose, and thank you for all that you do. Something that we can all feel excited about is the workforce housing project that the district will be starting soon. CSEA believes that it is the right of all workers to live in the community for which they work. This will give us an opportunity to help members make that a reality. This is also a wonderful opportunity for our hardworking teachers. All school staff will be a part of this project, and all could be considered for housing right here in Pacifica. The housing will be under under market value and will be a valuable asset to the district and community to help us attract and retain all school staff. This will only make our district better for all. I do not know what this will be called yet, but I hope it will reflect all school staff and not highlight one over the other. It is intended for all of us. Last week, I saw the importance of our school counselors as I went to a school where there was some rumble over one student. I went to observe the student and did not see anything unsafe or unreasonable. After a couple of days, I had to let the teacher know that there was really nothing to worry about, and we came to the conclusion that this student was now seeing a school counselor on a regular basis. We believe that this is what made the difference for the student. I just want to thank all the school counselors out there who are working hard these days for our students. Your efforts are certainly paying off. Lastly, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that everyone will spend time with loved ones and practice some self-care and get the rest that you all deserve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. People wishing to address the board?
We have Jen Kinder.
Jen, who?
Kinder?
Huh.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen? Because I have a PowerPoint of photos for the fields. Got it. Okay. Hi, I'm here representing the many Pacifica families and coaches here in Pacifica. We are very concerned about the health and safety of ourselves and our kids with the Pacifica School District fields. So we have 300 signatures to redo the fields, please. I'm just going to read the petition so that will make more sense. Attention Pacifica families, elementary schools, including Ortega, Valimar, Cabrillo, Ocean Shore, and Sunset Ridge grass fields are in horrendous conditions that are unsafe for our children to walk and play on. You may have noticed firsthand how poor field conditions are while walking your child to school or to participate in AYSO soccer or PAL baseball. A parent recently broke his ankle, and we've had numerous sprained, twisted ankles injuries because of the countless hidden protrusions, ruts, trenches, uneven surfaces covered in weeds, thorns, holes, mounds from gophers, bare spots with hard soil exposed, patches of grass, and standing water after the rains that is not properly drained. It is Pacifica School District who's in charge of maintaining safe and usable fields for our children to play on. They should be accountable and liable for the injuries that have occurred. They've been irresponsible, careless with our children's safety by neglecting the fields over the years. They have refused to do even minimal maintenance to keep the fields safe, despite having funds to upkeep the fields, getting COVID relief funds and making money from AYSO and PAL baseball renting the fields. We need your signature to help push the district to do their jobs with the tax money we pay, to maintain the fields until they can be totally overhauled. Other districts have well-maintained fields, while we have the schools with very poor and unmaintained fields. Our children are finally back in school in person, and we need to have safe fields for our kids to play for their mental and physical health, especially post-COVID, with families being stuck inside for the last year and a half. Please sign this petition and pass along to other families that you know in Pacifica that participate in all of these sports programs. We need all the signatures we can get, and for parents to come out and speak at the PSD meeting. Strength in numbers. We definitely need help with our fields, everybody. I'm one that sprained my ankle because of the uneven surface, uncut grass. I coach kids that have sprained and twisted their ankles. These holes are, I'm talking 5 inches by 6 inches deep, even bigger than that. So I would like to be on the agenda to present some pictures that I've taken of the fields to just show you that this is not really patchwork. We really do need to redo the fields, preferably by turf. I was told before that that's going to be done in 2024, 2025. We really cannot wait that long. It's very serious conditions. So thank you for having me today.
Folks, we don't do audio. I mean, we don't do video, it's only audio. So you just elevate to audio.
Just allowed to talk.
What's that?
Just allowed to talk.
Yes, just audio.
Next, we have Charlotte Allen.
Hi, can you hear me? Great, thank you so much. And just one thing, I'm going to take less than 3 minutes. So Jen, I don't think that she shared with you, but signature wise, I know last I checked, we have almost 300 signatures and counting. So this is a lot of people's concerns. So Board of Trustees, Dr. Olson and staff, my name is Charlotte Allen. And as many of you do, I wear many hats. Although I am a former PTO president, soccer mom, baseball mom, parent volunteer, and spouse of a devoted AYSO board member tasked with the difficult job of field coordinator, no less, I am coming to you tonight simply as a mom. And frankly, you have already heard from all of them, from us. So here I am, the parent of a 6th grade boy, a boy that lost an entire year of play, of outdoor PE, of interacting face-to-face with peers. I, like many of you, am the parent to a child recovering from the damage the pandemic has done to our youth. The good news is, I see this damage is reversible, but what it takes are continued social interactions, community building, and plain old-fashioned play. These kids that up until yesterday were ineligible for a COVID vaccination are able to seek solace and should be able to seek safety in the great outdoors. But sadly, the only fields offered at their schools are unsafe, full of holes, pools of water, and gaping spots of dust. My son's best friend tore a tendon the first month of school on the Valimar field. A parent broke their ankle last month cheering for their 6-year-old at Odstad Field. AYSO had to relocate children from the Ortega field mid-season with the field so clearly being unsafe. It is unclear to me how a district can consciously face this liability day to day. I beg of you, as a mom of a child that deserves outdoor space and safe fields to play, socialize, and do PE for the first time in a year, please address the fields, call in the experts, and invest in the work it takes to make them safe. Thank you.
The next speaker is Michelle Gray.
Thank you all. Can you hear me? Hi, Michelle Gray. Done this a couple times before, but I just want to get there. I'd love to understand how we can get this topic of the fields on as a formal agenda item so that there can be some discussion. I appreciate always being able to voice a concern and have an opinion, but there is no back and forth on this. And it's been a long time, a couple of years, actually. I feel like I personally have been coming and raising this issue. So I'd love to understand how we can get a little dialogue back and forth on it. I do want to add to the comments made from some of my colleagues and fellow parents. We have over 800 kids in AYSO. This is our last week, this week pretty much. And the fields were in such bad shape. We've had to relocate. And then when we got rain, we're so thankful to get rain, right? Everyone's thrilled we're getting rain. But the fields were in such bad shape that the rain just completely really swamped things out quite a bit. And so if you don't keep up with the fields, then you're really just going to be so devastated in the repair. And I think, unfortunately, over the past couple of years, not keeping up with the fields, the task has gotten so great that becomes the excuse on why we can't approach the task, right? So that's a real concern. I have a daughter at IBL, and she was told, I'm sorry, everyone, for PE, we can't allow you out on the fields because it's not safe. We know the track is going to be redone. The money's been appropriated at some point. I hope that actually happens. But they actually have said to the students, we can't let you out on the field because it's unsafe. So we have a school district where the students aren't even allowed out on their fields. Or if they are allowed on the fields are not in very good shape at all. So it's a significant concern for us. I would love to understand the response from the district on this. It just seems like there's a recording of comments and concerns. There doesn't seem to be a plan or a proposal on how to move forward. And I think that's really a big thing missing here. So I'd love to understand how this can get on the agenda so that there can be some dialogue and understanding on the district's approach and proposal on how to improve our fields for our kids and our staff. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kelly T.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hi, my name is Kelly Sa, and I have 2 kids attending Valamar. I am also a U8 coach for my son's team. And I firsthand, I've seen the Valamar fields and they're pretty terrible. My concern is that the children are in unsafe conditions, to add to what Michelle was saying, with IBL and the PE teachers' concerns about these fields, the same sort of thing happened at Valamar as well. There was a running program that was brought to Valamar as an extracurricular activity for the VIA Academy, and it was actually turned down by Miss Labeo because she was so concerned about the track and kids getting hurt out there after COVID. You guys were mentioning that morale is down, from the staff and the children. I think we all need to get outside, and the kids need this activity and to be together and to do things together, and just having these poor conditions, which I've heard that has been going on for years. You can tell these fields have been unkempt for years now. Is just really, it's sad. It's very sad that these kids can't even enjoy themselves on a field that should be taken care of on a regular basis. And then in terms of just AYSO going out there, these kids are having a great time. Families are coming out. I've never seen so many parents, but the fields, the conditions are horrendous. I don't know if the board of trustees, if you guys, when's the last time you've been out there, but it is riddled with holes, covered in grass, so that they're death traps for people to put their foot in and just trip and twist and break their ankles. With the rains, I know that might be something a little bit more difficult and challenging to temporarily fix until we can get some of these turf fields. It is a swamp out there. I feel like I sprained my ankle last night. We're just scrambling just to try to find an area that's dry that we can practice on so these kids can get out and get exercise and be social again and be together. It's really concerning. We know we do have this petition going out to families around the community of Pacifica. We've reached over 300 signatures. And same thing as Michelle and the other concerned parents here, like Jen and Charlotte. I'd also like to find out how we can get this on the agenda so we can hear what you have to say and what your plan is, rather than just us coming out and speaking out, which is great. We want to be heard, but would also like to hear from you what your plan is on your side.
Okay, and then the last speaker for the people wishing to address the board in 9C is Virginia Chapania, and then there will be a speaker later on for item 10E.
Hi, my name is Virginia Chapaniak. I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher at Ocean Shore School. I'm here tonight to address the board regarding safety concerns that I have for our students at Ocean Shore School. As you know, we're having a pretty difficult time right now with a lot of construction going on due to water damage during our last storm. And that included damage that was done to our playgrounds. And I could go on for quite a long time about my concerns overall, but I'm going to focus on the kids and the playground at this point. This last week, I believe it was Wednesday, we had heavy equipment on our playground, and there was a street sweeper, a bobcat, and a heavy duty truck. And they were all on campus and in use during our children's recess and lunch. And it was a K-8 lunch, and we had, I believe, poor communication, but I believe our principal, who is the primary person to speak to about safety issues on our campus, had requested that the heavy equipment not be in use during the time that our children were out in the exact area that they were working. And that was overlooked. And they went ahead and did it anyway. There was one standard with some caution tape that surrounded one portion, not surrounded, it was strung in one portion of that workspace, not the entire space. So we had children that were chasing balls running underneath that tape. There was one point where the tape was so close to the building, there was only about a 3-foot distance for people to walk between the playground and the building. And it effectively cut off the use of bathrooms for our kids that are assigned bathrooms on the far D wing. So myself and 2 other teachers that I know of spent our entire lunch recess out standing and trying to hold back the kids from the work site while the heavy equipment kept working. And it was frightening because we don't have enough staff on the playground as it is. And I didn't feel that we could be anywhere else but there in order to protect our kids. And so my wish is that the maintenance staff, the head of maintenance, communicate better and respectfully with the leadership at our school sites when they request no equipment. It should be adhered to, especially on a minimum day. They could have come in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and done everything they needed to do, but they insisted on doing it when our kids were there. It's a great concern.
Thank you, Virginia. That is
Okay.
the end of public comment.
Okay. Correspondence. Superintendent Olson?
I do not have any correspondence.
Okay. Board Superintendent Communications? You go down the line. Would you like to start? Trustee Patel?
Other than I had a meeting with Heather, I have no other correspondence to report.
I also had a meeting with Heather. San Mateo County Department of Education had put out Valerie and Walter's best books for 2021, and I enjoyed that thoroughly, so I could see what our library's best choices would be. And they also gave really good information about ordering your books as quickly as possible because everything's on back order. Also, Sue Beckmeyer invited me to the author visit of Kat Zhang. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you, Sue. And also attended CPAC's Implementing an IEP, hosted by John Bartfield. And we also had a special guest. I don't have her name on hand, but she was very thorough because she also had learning disabilities as well. And then this morning I attended the parent social for special ed. It's always nice to touch base with the parents to see how things are going. And that's it.
Seaweed.
So I also met with Heather and just a shout out to Spark Poetry because they had their first slam, so I attended that.
It's been kind of busy. So I attended 2 different workforce housing planning meetings with the city planner, and we're prepping for a big meeting tomorrow with the city around workforce housing. I attended San Mateo County Office of Education meetings with Nancy McGee, and talking a lot about the SEL, or special education, SEL and vaccinations. And we also, and I also attended a SMC school district organization meeting, which is my obligation for the board. Once a year I attend. They did have a few things they wanted me to mention to everyone. That the voting by trustee area, I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but that we may want to be proactive on that, because if we do get served with legal notice, that we would be on a timeline that will cost us more money. It also allows us a little bit of more leeway on the drawing of the map without the attorneys. And also the demand for demographers, who are the people that would assess the map, is incredibly high. So if we're not on a timeline, that'd be helpful. So that's something to think about later with the board. And we voted in the new slate for the year, so that was easy enough. I also attended an informal meeting with the city of Pacifica, and we're excited about some potential future collaboration with the city. I also, in addressing some of the issues with the field, just in this meeting, if you look under service contracts, we actually have a contract to take care of the gopher issue over at Ocean Shore School. And I believe either the last meeting or the meeting before, we put some money towards fixing the field at IBL. So there is some movement on that. And anybody that knows me knows for years and years, I've been concerned about these fields. So I'm glad to hear all of my comrades at Vilamar coming to speak to it finally. So last thing, which I mentioned last time, was the dress code, or dress and grooming. Still, particularly what I'm hearing from is from IBL and actually Valamar also, having issues with dress codes that are old that are being enforced, and also breaking some codes that are actually have been passed most recently. I would like this to be on the next agenda on December 1st to talk about, because I think it's not, where our kids of color are being discriminated against, and our girls are being discriminated against, and it's a problem, and I really think we need to get it fixed, in my opinion. So that's something I just wanted to put out there. I also think there needs to be some clarity that the school district passes policy that the schools are to implement. The schools are not to make their own individual policies. The schools put color on the school, not coming up with their own plans and policies around things. So I think maybe some of that got lost during COVID, and we need to kind of regroup on and just have a refresher on what the policies are. Because I'm hearing more and more of just different policies happening in different schools, sort of randomly, and that doesn't, as we all know, is just not the way it should be. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we really definitely need to work on that and think about it for the future. So.
Thank you. Okay, I also attended several of the workforce housing meetings with the city of Pacifica, and we'll have a presentation tomorrow night with the public. There was also the public-private partnership meeting with the city of Pacifica on future ways to work together. And the San Mateo County Office of Ed calls. Also the author visit with the Patchwork Dragon, which was a really fun visit with all the classrooms that Sue Beckmeyer set up. And of course, always meeting with Dr. Olson every week.
Nice to see you all, right? Nice to see you all in person. I think the only one that I attended that wasn't mentioned is that we recently met with Moody's, the bond rating company, around the next set of bonds, the $25 million worth of bonds. We believe that we will get a bond rating likely tomorrow, and that it would be a few days that it could be shared publicly. So just always love to talk about our district, and we got kudos for the stability in our district and our rollout with COVID safety plans, as well as the increased assessed value of properties in Pacifica. And we always love to mention the World Surfing Championship and the world famous Taco Bell. So, but I was proud to talk about our district, and it was with the same rater that we had 3 years ago, and it's nice to see the progress that we've made. So, thank you, Josie, for your leadership in that area.
Okay, item 10, district business. District goals. The district values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan and strategic plan All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. Details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our district website at www.pacificasd.org. Okay, item A, organizational chart. Dr. Olson.
Sure. In front of you, you each have a big copy of the district org chart, and this certainly doesn't have all 300 of our district employees, but it does speak to the different divisions within our district, and we do have some new people. So new in his seat is John Bartfield, the Director of Special Education and Student Services. He will present tonight on mental health, and some of his leadership areas include enrollment, the school psychologist, the school counselors. So he plays a really very large role in that, as well as the work that's being done in special education. Will Lucy leads the Ed Services team, which includes both curriculum and instruction and technology. You'll see in our technology team that we're a little light. First of all, for over 3,000 devices, we only have a very small team, and we have an opening in our network analyst position as Eric Hernandez went to go work for San Mateo County Office of Ed. Then the business department oversees child nutrition, oversees our bond, facilities, maintenance operations, and then any of the business services, payroll, things in terms of people getting paid, and that's led by Josie Peterson. And then Dr. Carla Chavez Torres is in charge of the human resources department with Susie Santiago. It's been a very busy time in human resources, a lot of hiring and a lot of new positions, so we're happy about that. And then our hardworking leaders at the sites are our school principals. As we said, this is a really most unusual year, and principals are the ones that are leading their school sites in these very challenging times. Just a few things to point out on this is that as we finish this, we will be seeking a title change for Jen Gray and Lori Miller, as they are both considered supervisors and have requested a name change. So we'll talk about that in the next item. The other piece is that the Director of Facilities, Maintenance, and Operations oversees the lead custodian, so that in our district, that's Bob Becker. But the school principals are going to oversee the site custodians, the daytime and nighttime custodians. So that's a bit of a shift for us. In the past, the director oversaw all of the custodians, and so now we feel like that's best served by the school sites. The only difference in that is that because maintenance is in charge of coverage for the schools, that the vacations will go through facilities maintenance and operations with communications to the school principals. So that's where we are. We're pleased to have the stability of a number of, all of our principals are in the same position that they were last year, although it's very much a very different job. But we are thankful for the hard work of the individuals in our school district. Are there any questions?
I just have a comment. Thank you for doing this. I was just hoping that it could go on to the website, so if parents have any questions about who leads what department or where they should go if they have questions, I think that would be beneficial.
We'd be happy to put that on the website. The one thing that I say is that if a parent has a question, their very first place to start is with the classroom teacher or the principal.
Exactly.
That's, and then from there we can help support in other ways. But sometimes people come straight to the district and we say, have you had a chance to talk to your principal about this?
Yes.
So.
And I have heard concerns about that from one or two principals that they didn't even know about something. Right. So, definitely go to your teacher first and then your principal.
Yep, we'll put this on the website. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Item B, changing classified management titles. Dr. Torres.
Good evening. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the Pacifica School District to change the titles of the classified management position as follows. Child Nutrition Supervisor to Child Nutrition Program Manager. The Supervisor of Behavioral Program and Related Services to Program Manager of Behavioral and Related Services. And Behavioral Program Supervisor to Behavioral Program Manager. Classified management title changes will be reflected on the job descriptions as well as the salary schedule for these positions. The rationale, Pacifica School District received a request from the current Child Nutrition Supervisor to change the position's title to Child Nutrition Program Manager as a result of her work with Mindful Civility. Below, I also wrote about the purpose and the mission and vision of Mindful Civility. But currently, our district currently employs the Supervisor of Child Nutrition and the Supervisor of Behavioral and Related Services. We do not currently employ a Behavioral Program Manager. The previous title of Supervisor was identified as a more rank-ish title versus Manager. We would like to apply this change consistently and also change the two other classified supervisor positions as noted in the recommendation.
Okay, are there any questions regarding the approval of changing job titles?
It's just the title, it's no change in salary.
Correct. Right.
The only question that I have is, does this have any implication on either state norms or compliance or anything like that? You know, when I look online on CDE, I see the term child nutrition supervisor and it comes with an assessment, you know, so I just want to make sure that the title change doesn't affect any of those issues.
No.
That's a direct answer. We're changing the title on the job description, but it's the same job description. Did we update any of the little items in the job description, or it's exactly the same?
No, just the title.
I think there was a minor revision, and correct me if I'm wrong, where the CDE several years ago required that this position have the licensing and the bachelor's degree. And I'm not sure if it was on the last revision or if it's on here.
I think we updated the Child Nutrition Program Manager to reflect the education that is needed to fill that position. And Josie recommended that.
Yeah, and that was really the only thing. And it's based on the CDE, Child Nutrition Services Department, that oversees that program.
So it fills the needs of the supervisor role per the CDE, just changing the
Which
title.
was already, the person was already qualified.
Yeah.
It was just updating the job description.
Okay. And does this have any impact with, I just want to make sure the role is also seen as equivalent compared to other districts, so that it, just visually that it doesn't look like we don't have a child nutrition supervisor, whereas other districts may have that title.
I haven't talked to other school districts about their positions and their titles, but it's something I could look into.
And the titles vary from school district to school district depending on the size. Sometimes they're called directors, managers. So it does vary based on the different districts and how they label their positions. This position is really written based on the child nutrition services at CDE and what those job requirements are to run the program, because we are overseen by the National School Lunch Program by the state. I don't know if that helps.
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the change of job titles? The whole list of them. Child Nutrition Program Supervisor, Supervisor, Behavioral Program Related Services Manager, Behavioral Program Supervisor, from Supervisor to Program Manager.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. Item C, LSCA initial proposal for negotiations. Dr. Torres?
So we are going to elevate Jonathan Harris as panelist and Megan Elspring. Did we say we were going to elevate her?
She said it was okay, just to have Jonathan.
Can you hear me? Okay, here, let me make my screen a little bigger. There we go. Oh, okay, well, thank you. So my name is Jonathan Harris, and I am the chair of the negotiations team for LSEA. I wanted to start actually just by thanking you all for giving us audience, but also by introducing our team. We have several new members on our team this year. So Rachel Merlot is on our team from IBL. Megan Elsburn is our LSEA president and also a member of the team from Cabrillo. Gina Arguello from Ortega, Natasha Glasgow from Ocean Shore, and then I too am from Ocean Shore. Before I introduce our Sunshine, I did want to just make two hopefully fairly brief comments. I wanted us to remember where we were in March 2020. Probably actually just the day before the shutdown, I recall on this day that Tom Hanks came down with COVID and the NBA shut down. And on that same evening, we had a board meeting that was very, very controversial. LSEA had hundreds of people in attendance in order to support us. We were not on good terms with the district at this time. And I kind of want to bring this to light just to show how far we've come. At that time, teachers were really feeling disrespected. Our pay was at the bottom of the county. And I'll say that since that time, we've managed to heal a lot of wounds. We managed to safely navigate through distance learning, through COVID. We managed to come up with several MOUs that I think our membership thought were very fair. We very much appreciate the support of the board in their decision to make return to school come at the time that teachers were able to get fully vaccinated. And since then also we've come up with a bargaining agreement where we've gotten a 3% raise for our teachers and for teaching staff and our LSEA members. We also at this point, and I will say kind of reflecting back on that dark March day, that at that time we really did not feel like we were being heard from the board. And I would like to say that during COVID, that really changed a bit. And I want to thank Trustee Villalobos for reaching out to us. She has come to an LSEA meeting. I appreciate Trustee Patel for coming to a meeting and would like to reiterate that we really appreciate you coming. We appreciate the dialogue. It really leads to a feeling of us being more of a team, which leads to better relations and great interaction and negotiation. So thank you. The other comment I just wanted to make is where we are now. Again, we're still at the bottom of the county as far as pay. We hope that that is something that we can fix. We realize that's not something that is in the hands of the board, so to speak, just to some degree that is, but state funding has to do with that as well. And I wanted to share a quote that was just shared with me by, oh, and it just went dark. Oh, there we go. From Natasha Glasgow, who just joined our team. So this is from Dr. Tracy Renee, who said, "One day soon, we're going to have a conversation about how the term self-care is currently being weaponized against teachers. No amount of yoga or massages will fix this. Educators are operating in full crisis mode and need structural changes from the top." Now, I realize that for us here with LSEA, you all are our top. We look towards you to be leaders, and we appreciate your leadership and that you've taken on this big task in your job as trustees. We also look to you to hopefully make some changes as far as state actions and what they're doing with funding of our school districts, and hope that there's some action on your part to make our pie a little bigger here in Pacifica. And this is something that we can do as a team. We've shown it through COVID, and we really hope that we can continue this year. We did bargain on Monday. We started talking about a new MOU to protect teachers and LSEA staff. And we really do hope that we're very close. It was a productive session. we really hope that it will protect us, and look forward to being part of a team that makes that pie a little bigger and makes that share of the pie a little bit bigger to get us up the salary schedule and make teachers want to stay here and come here. So thank you for your attention to that. And I'm going to read our sunshine proposal. Oops, I just had it. Hopefully it has been shared with you all. I sent it in with the agenda item, and it's in front of you, but I'll read it for the public as well. Pursuant to Government Code Section 3547, Laguna Salada Education Association hereby sunshines or submits the following initial proposal to the Board of Trustees for public hearing and adoption regarding the 2022 to 2023 contract negotiations. Pursuant to Section 1.4 of the current negotiated agreement, such agreement shall continue in effect year by year until a new contract is negotiated. The following articles are opened each year. Article 7, calendar. LSEA has an interest in developing a calendar that meets the needs of our staff and community. Article 9, compensation. LSEA has an interest that unit members are compensated with a cost of living raise that will attract and retain qualified teachers and compensate them for all their time and effort in the form of total compensation, which includes salary and benefits. This we feel will help the systematic teacher crisis in this district. Each year, LSEA may open 3 articles for negotiation. This year, the following articles are of interest to the Laguna Salada Education Association. Article 8, hours. LSEA has an interest in discussing our members' duty day and professional obligations. Article 11, class size. LSEA has an interest to discuss class size and class size impacts. Article 22, safety conditions of employment. LSEA has an interest to update language to this article to reflect and incorporate safeguards concerning conditions in the modern world, including COVID-19, wildfires, and extreme weather. So that's it. I thank you for your attention, and we look forward to a very productive bargaining year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was information only. Item D, school climate update, mental health and discipline. John Bartville.
Can I just ask a quick technical question? That's display A and that's display B?
Yeah, I'm
You're A.
I'm displaying.
Perfect. I'll display it on B.
Can I just make one comment on the last item?
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, my only comment is that this all looks good to me, but I was surprised that, considering that Megan brought up the stipends for special ed at the last meeting, that was something they were in favor of. I was just surprised that it wasn't in this proposal. So that was just my only comment, but everything else, I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Okay, school climate update.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Trustees. I am pleased to be presenting to you tonight on mental health and discipline and school climate.
Oops, you're a couple slides ahead, I think. There you go.
So we are going to start with reviewing some discipline numbers, and we'll look at our suspension data. We'll look at this year's data, and also in a couple of slides we have a 5-year comparison. And we'll take a look at suspensions thus far for the 21-22 school year. We have a total of 9 suspensions, which have resulted in a total of 14 days. Before we look at sort of our other numbers with regard to suspension, I just really want to point out that all of our schools do prioritize alternatives to suspension instead of having students out of school for suspension. And the reasons are, well, the obvious reason is we want students to stay in school. And then there is a tremendous amount of research out there that has shown that suspensions are not effective in changing behavior. In fact, sometimes it can make it worse, both in the short and long term. So that said, I have been communicating with our schools, and I'm definitely aware of many alternative suspensions that are in place. And some examples here, and when we're looking at these alternatives, really it's through the lens of students understanding kind of the harm that their behavior has caused, and then what they can do to repair that harm. That's like one of the premises of alternatives. Another is, what sort of proactive measures do we need to have in place in the future for the student? Do we need services for the student to kind of prevent the behavior from happening again? And then a third sort of lens or premise is, there needs to be a punishment of some sort, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the student out of school. But I think that the most important one is, and the one that you'll see kind of throughout the presentation, connected to our social emotional learning curriculum, social emotional learning in general, is the student really understanding their behavior, what the harm was that it caused, and how they can repair that harm. So kind of through that, we have restorative conversations, restorative circles, and conflict resolution that's in place. Another example that we have are community service projects at school. An example of that is cleaning a school after maybe an act of vandalization. There's vulgar language, so the student does a project where they make posters that go around the school after they've had the conversation on why their words were hurtful and they weren't appropriate. Parent, student, principal conferences, in that proactive way to sort of head off future behaviors of the past. Behavior contracts, so giving students positive behavior support plans that can help them moving forward. Counseling is a very common alternative to suspension. It's something that we know that the student needs help. They need help managing their behavior, their feelings, what's behind sometimes their behavior. So we'll put counseling in place. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then we also have detention, which is in school and an alternative to suspension. So a couple of things to be aware of when we're looking at the data. The suspension numbers we have are inclusive of both in-house suspensions and out-of-school suspensions. So the numbers you'll see, it does include when we've had, we've still classified it as a suspension, but they are in school. And when we're looking at our numbers, we have, a metric of the number of students, so that number of 9 students for this school year, and then the total number of incidents. So 2 different ways to look at suspensions, and you'll see on the next slide, when we look at our 5-year, those are reflected here in this graph. So we've got the blue number is the total number suspended, and the orange are the number of incidents. So obviously these are students who had multiple incidents were resulting in a suspension. So I think when we're looking at the data here, the numbers, well, first of all, the fact that we had students who had multiple suspensions and we had that number means that we weren't necessarily successful in the interventions that we had in place for many of those students. And you can see our numbers, they held fairly kind of steady, so to speak. 1920 was a little lower, but of course we were out in about March for COVID for that. So, and you can see our numbers for this year. Of course, there are EdCode mandatory things that we do have to suspend students for, where we don't have a choice. We're not able to put the alternatives in place. So what we want to get to, well, we don't want to have any, but we want to get to the point where, most, if not all of our suspensions are those mandatory ones, or the vast majority of them are.
Both of those last slides were highlighted just because they were additions since the agenda was posted.
Thanks. So I want to focus a little bit here on restorative practices. So we saw that as one of sort of the alternatives of having you know, a restorative approach to you know, addressing behavior. And generally speaking, you know, restorative practices is an approach emphasizing healthy relationships, social emotional skills, and empathy with our students. It does include specific processes that I know we're all aware of, and that we do have in place, you know, under that restorative justice kind of umbrella, you know, having restorative circles in place to respond to maybe behaviors between students where you bring two students together. There's affective statements where the students are explaining kind of, you know, their points of view and how the others' kind of behavior impacted them, and then kind of coming to a common ground about how they can move forward in that restorative circle part. But the restorative approach was some of those other things we were talking about, the projects and the pieces like that. So restorative practices is definitely not just, you know, the circles, it's kind of that whole approach of, you know, student understanding their behavior and what they can do to repair and move on. It's very much connected to our SEL curriculum that we're going to talk about in just a moment here, and our focus on social emotional learning in general. A big piece of restorative practices, as we will see, are sort of proactive school climate, school culture work, and kind of creating that culture. So we can be successful when we do have that kind of tier 2 restorative circle piece that we have to put in place. We do have 14 staff right now that are attending a multi-part training on restorative practices with San Mateo County Office of Ed. This is very exciting. We've got representatives from each school, and obviously more than one. And they're definitely getting, you know, lots of background, lots of overview, lots of tools, lots of examples about how to move this forward when they come back to their schools. We're kind of conceptualizing this as a district team as well. We pulled them together kind of midway through the training as a check-in to see how it was going, what sorts of resources were needed on their part, ideas, kind of exchanging ideas. I mean, this is really particular to their sites, but we do see value in having them meet on a regular basis as a district team. So we have another meeting that's scheduled right when that training ends, which is in, I think, a couple of weeks. And we will move forward with that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So more on restorative practices, excuse me. As I said before, we would say 80% of this is proactive. And this is that building, fostering, maintaining a positive, supportive school climate and culture. So this is so important, and this is tied in, as you'll see, with our social emotional curriculum. This is done. Some examples that we have going right here at our schools are community circles, our Caring School Community, our social emotional learning curriculum. That's a major component of it, is like the morning circle, closing circle at the end of the school day, circles in response to things that come up. We have our school counselors making presentations in classrooms, so that's that proactive piece. So they're going in kind of theme-based presentations based on, you know, what's happening at their schools, in classroom, you know, responsibility, bullying, responsible use of technology. Those are some examples that we have. You know, school-wide behavioral expectations, school-wide systems, monthly themes of positive behavior at school. The use of sort of restorative questions just out on the schoolyard when things come up just in the moment, and the affective statements. So These are all specific examples that are happening right now at our schools. And that goal is to establish that community, the empathy among students, and just overall healthy relationships with our students. So we still have a long way to go here. We have a long way to go, but it is certainly well underway at our sites. And then that 20% is the reactive. So what are we doing in when there's a significant behavior that happens, or there's a fight between students, or pieces like that where we have to do a process, like a restorative circle that I talked about before. How can we repair that relationship? How can students understand that the harm that they have caused and be empathetic about it? And then what are we going to do to move on? So this is all the work that we have ahead of us and that our team is learning about. The principals are absolutely behind this, and we've got our school counselors. They're all attending that training too, and it's definitely moving forward. So this all really relates to our work with social emotional learning, and just generally about social emotional needs. They are, of course, certainly heightened at this time with our students. This is still lots of residuals from COVID. There were challenges related to COVID that students were experiencing just in their own families, in their communities, and stress within the households, and that's still there. And there's students being anxious about returning to school. There's students hearing about some of the few of the positive cases we've had. There's heightened needs, increase in trauma and adverse childhood experiences impacting students' mental health, and we see this manifest in the school setting. Not rocket science, but the extended time that students have spent out of school is absolutely affecting their behavior and their success. And I put K2 here on this slide. I mean, it would make sense that students who had never been in school are coming to school and they don't know how to do school yet. They're really, really happy to be here, and they aren't quite there with what the expectations are, and need help with that. And but that's not just the younger kids. It's all of our students who are susceptible to that. So again, we want to be proactive with this. We want to put tools in people's hands and the supports. And yeah, just generally social emotional learning and supports, they should be accessed throughout the school day. We'll talk a little bit about that. As far as our staffing that addresses our students' social emotional needs and mental health, we are very well staffed to support our students' needs, which is awesome. Our social emotional wellness team, our SO team, is the team that provides these services for students. It is made up of school counselors, school psychologists, mental health counselors, and our behavior team. Just some highlights here about our staffing. We have an increase from 2 to 6 of our school counselors this school year. There's one at every school. LMEC doesn't have a school counselor, but they certainly have access to supports if and when they need it. We have, and just the school counselors, we heard Nicole Sayers in her comment earlier, it's just been phenomenal to be able to have that kind of linchpin, so to speak, at each site. It's just been really crucial. We have Youth Service Bureau counselors at Palomar, IBL, Cabrillo, and Ocean Shore. They're not there full time. They have kind of a couple days here, maybe 2 to 3 days a week. We have a Star Vista counselor at Sunset Ridge. And then there's a social work intern that that we have that's supervised by Christina Iverson, our mental health lead at IDL and Sunset Ridge. And I think added to this slide is also just Christina Iverson in general. We've freed up more of her time, so she doesn't have a caseload of students that she sees like she has in the past, and she's able to really coordinate all of the players here, and she's got the expertise in mental health. So, you know, we work really closely together, and she works directly with these folks on just procedures, protocols, referral process, consent for parents, case supervision, and helping them in many, many ways. So that's a really significant piece of our staffing as well. So with SEL, social emotional learning, I borrowed this graphic there from the Collaborative of Academic Social Emotional Learning, CASEL. And it has a nice definition here of what SEL is, about acquiring and applying knowledge, skills, and attitudes for healthy identities, managing emotions, showing empathy, maintaining supportive relationships, responsible and caring decisions. So you can see the connections to the goals of restorative practices too. It's all connected. I like the graphic because I just think it's a nice graphic. It's got the 5, social emotional learning at the core, 5 competencies around it, and then around those 5 competencies that support students, learning and development, we've got the rings about where they can practice that, where they can experience it, and who's involved with that. So with classrooms, the explicit instruction, that first ring, some of the SEL curriculum, ways to practice it. At school, we've got the culture, the climate that we've talked about, that's supporting their social emotional growth. The families and caregivers, we know that we have to have a strong family relationship and collaboration to support all learning. It's really true also with social emotional learning. We need to make sure that we're consistent and kind of we're working with families, so we know what they're doing at home, what they're experiencing at home, we're supporting that, and we're working together. And then the communities, and if we can generalize things that students are learning at school out into the community, and have our community partners kind of aware of what our school community's goals are, and we're all sort of speaking the same language, I mean, that would be an awesome place to be. So, when we're looking at social emotional learning, we love our triangles and our tiered systems in education, so we can look at it through a tiered system of support. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, we talked about the Tier 1, the universal, that the students plug it into the climate, the culture, the SEL curriculum that we have. Actually, you can move on, Will, because I think I have specific slides. Yeah, Tier 1, school class-wide interventions, explicitly teaching positive behaviors, promoting social emotional development. Really a prime example of this is the Caring School Community curriculum. That is something that comes to us through the Mental Health Student Services Act grant. We're really lucky to have that. It comes with, I have a whole slide on it coming up in just a second, I'm not going to it. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so Tier 1 interventions and then restorative practices we talked about. Caring School Community, here's a slide on that. This comes from them. It develops students' social skills, their SEL competencies, enables a transformative stance on discipline, and it's really tied with what I was talking about before about students understanding what they've done and what they can do to repair. And, you know, there's a whole principal guide on things that they can do to support. You know, you can take Caring School very, very far at your sites. And at its core, really, is positive behavior through responsibility, empathy, and cooperation, teaching those things, creating it for the students to feel heard, known, and cared for. Circles. So really, like, circles are a great place to start with Caring School, and I think circles are happening pretty much in most of our classrooms at our sites. There's morning circles, there's closing circles, and like I said, there's more of those restorative circles. But you know, we've been working with teachers. It's not easy to just incorporate this into the school day. We've had one PD with 4 of our schools. We have another PD later in the month with the other 2 schools that are implementing, and with Caring School community. And you know, it's important to be realistic about this. Like, teachers are packed with what they're doing in the school day, so some of it has been, you know, how can we really integrate this, and how can we you know, how can you build it into your school day? And we had a couple of teachers who shared some success stories about how they were able to do that, and you know, how the circles have been very useful for them to implement, and the good things about that. So a couple of those teachers are, you know, they would welcome other teachers to come in and observe their circles and work together, you know, to try to build that. But what we really want are, you know, the students to become motivated and feel positive about their school and the community that they're in. Caring School. So our Tier 2 interventions for social emotional learning and mental health, they are mostly our counseling services that we have. So we have structured counseling services that we put in place for students. There are different sort of referral processes that happen. Different sites have, you know, Sunset Ridge has something called the screen team, and you know, student concerns come through that, and then it filters out to the people that make decisions on, you know, what should be in place for those students. Some of it's student study team meetings that happen. But we do have a structured way to make sure that students' needs are met in that realm of counseling. And it's generally like 6 to 8 week, you know, 6 to 8 sessions. If we don't see change, or we need to do something more, we look at that at that point. But generally, you know, the school counselor has that. We also have groups that are in place at some schools, social skills groups. So that's our Tier 2. And again, we wouldn't be able to do this without our staffing. So it's just a blessing to be able to have that. In our district, the Tier 3 interventions really tend to be students with IEPs that have special education services, and it tends to be an educationally related mental health service that is in their IEP. Maybe if it's a behavioral need, there's a behaviorist that works with the student. There's a behavior intervention plan that the student has. Generally, these are driven through more formalized assessments that happen, where we need to kind of look at multiple settings and really delve down into what's happening with students. So we do have, you know, unfortunately, students who experience crisis, and we need to be ready to respond to that. We have all of our school counselors and school psychologists have been trained on level 1 threat assessment through San Mateo County, and this is a formalized way to respond to students who are engaging in unsafe behaviors, dangerous behaviors, who have made threats, and they work on that with Christina Iverson generally. She's mostly at the Tier 1, the level 1 threat assessment process that happens. And generally what happens with this is they really analyze what's happening in the situation, and most of the time, if it doesn't go to a tier 2, to a level 2, they'll put a safety plan in place. They'll have a way to check back and make sure that things are where they want it to be. Some examples of students in crisis are, any sort of concern about suicide, suicidal ideations. We need to intervene right away with those students and do this process. Threats, risk behaviors that risk bodily harm, and inappropriate sexual behavior. Care Solace. I know the board knows about Care Solace, and this is an important piece, important resource that we have. It's essentially a confidential concierge service that links up students and families with mental health services, substance abuse services, based on availability, insurance, preferences, resources. It's 24/7. It is every language is available to interact with whoever is making the call, and it's available to all of our students and all of our families. And I learned they also will follow up, like they'll link up families, but they also have a way to kind of check back and make sure that the family or the student is made the appointment, or they whatever was suggested did meet their needs. So Care Solace is a phenomenal service to have in our district. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm just curious, what are the mandatory suspension incidents? Like, what? I have a general idea, but I'm just wondering.
I don't have the list in front of me right now, but an example is weapon. There's actually specific ed code, like for instance on the knife and even the size of the knife. There's, I believe, bodily harm and injury is another mandatory. We could get you that list.
Have we had many of those?
There, of our suspensions, a fair number, at least half of them were mandatory required suspensions.
A little bit more information.
I have just a piggyback onto that is, if it's a mandatory suspension, do they have to serve their suspension at home, or can they serve their suspension in school?
That's a good question. I think that it would be, if it is recorded as a suspension, we could have that suspension be in school, if I'm not mistaken.
So we have that.
We can double check
leeway.
that, I guess, yeah.
So this is more of a general comment. So first, I just really do want to commend the district on focusing on mental health and SEL. I think that's probably across all districts the #1 area of importance and priority in supporting students. So I thank you for that presentation, John. I thought it was very thoughtful. And I also think it's really important. I'm a big fan of PBIS and the non-teacher version of it, positive parenting, I'm a big fan of as well, to really give students the autonomy and tools to both assess and judge their own behavior and impact, and I think that's really important. I'm curious to understand what more do we need to do to support teachers and classrooms and students. That looked very comprehensive in terms of staffing as well as practices in place, but I would just be curious to understand, is there a list of things that we aren't able to do, that maybe would be supportive?
That's a great question. I kind of look at it that there's a long game and a short game, and like the long game is that movement of the culture and the climate and the positive, just having students feel the community, and sometimes that's hard to wrap our arms around. Sometimes it's a little bit intangible. It's not something like, oh, I see it now. But we really want to keep the energy going in that direction through those various things. In the short term, I think it is, it's tools, it's getting tools into teachers' hands. It's having our school counselors be able to give tools and tips for teachers on kind of response in the moment, how to communicate, in certain situations. For behavior, we have the capacity to be able to, with our school psychologists, is to come in and observe students and try to, come up with interventions that are in place. So I think it's a combination of that the sort of long-term and kind of in the moment pieces. Another example is, we've got, through that grant, we have a behavioral screener, the universal screener that we're gonna have, and that'll be able to kind of identify some of the internalizing behaviors that students have, which are not, and that can be more subtle and, just really trying to hit multiple fronts.
Thank you. And then just one request. I don't know if this is possible, but it would be interesting to, based on the questions that have been asked by the other trustees, understanding the suspensions by type of suspension or what the kind of cause was.
So we can definitely get that. Well, it looks like he pulled from Data Zone the list of what the mandatory suspensions are.
I don't know if you want to hear them now. You want to hear them now?
You want to put them up on the screen? Can you show your screen?
Yeah, it's kind of small, but I can read them out.
Okay, sure.
Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment, it's a different gender. I don't get that part of it. But sexual harassment. Harass, intimidate, hostile environment. That's not mandatory. Hostile environment due to race, ethnicity, cause, attempt, threaten to physical injury, use force or violence, possess, sale, furnish, knife or dangerous object, possess, use, sale, furnish drugs, alcohol, attempt property damage.
Property damage is mandatory.
And mandatory means no discretion of the district, so your hands are tied in terms of.
Yes.
Okay.
So
just to clarify, because at least in other districts in California, like the previous district I worked at, some of those offenses did not seem to be cause for automatic suspension.
That's interesting.
So there was, I was listing off the ones that have been, over the past 3 years, been used for suspensions. The second one I said, the harassment, is not, it's a suspendable offense, but it's not a mandatory suspension. Yes.
I just want to say that I think Heather and admin's doing a good job trying to get the mental health aspects in place for all the children, students. The one thing I want to focus on is the tier 3 interventions, the extreme. And we can look at the suspensions from the past. Like, for example, 2017-18, there were 45 suspensions, but 61 incidents. So, and then from every year that was the case. So we know that there is going to be repeat offenders here. We already know that because there is a history of it. And so with the tier 3 interventions, what we have in place for all of our students may not work for the tier 3. And so I've mentioned it before, there is a service out there called Dooley Corporation, and they are coaches and mentors that go on site to the school to work with the student. And so I would like to see something as specific like that, because we already know that there's going to be repeat offenders here. And I also know that we receive additional funding for our at-risk, our foster care. So we have, some money there where we can start budgeting towards our repeat offenders or the tier 3. And we haven't done it before. And whatever we're doing now, or not right now, but in the past, isn't working for our tier 3 students. And so if it's not working, we have to change it. And so I'm asking the board to consider a more intensive service for our repeat offenders who are being suspended, so that we can actually help them understand what their behaviors are on site at the school. The other thing I'm kind of have a question about is the drugs and the alcohol. And I just pulled up, what a disability is. And alcoholism and drug addiction are disabilities. And so I'm just curious, are we treating those students who come, who are high at school or altered, I'll just say, because there could be a lot of different things. Are they being assessed if they are addicted? And are we doing the right protocols for that, treating it like a disability rather than a student who is, just being off track?
Well, it's interesting because that we can't treat them kind of through as a disability per se, like when we're thinking about like special education, because it's not an automatic category for one of we're so bound to these, the 13 areas of eligibility that we have to look at. The other piece is that, we don't have, training in, how to treat drug addiction and how to treat alcoholism. We would likely connect those families on the outside with services. Christina Hyerson is, connected with community resources that we would be able to connect families to. What the impact would be at school is what we would see. I mean, that student might qualify for special education if we were thinking about that due to difficulties they were having, and we might look at that through another area of eligibility. But those are real tricky ones because they really need they would need professional help that we don't really offer in school.
So we do have a social worker at 2 of our locations. So is that something where they could receive a referral?
Yes,
for
absolutely.
that student?
Yes.
And is there any way that could be in lieu of a out-of-school suspension? Because, we know that we're going to have more suspensions, and we know that there's going to be repeat offenders. And those are the students that are actually going to be at a learning loss because they're not receiving instruction. And at least if they're in school and serving a suspension or a detention, they can receive their materials. They can keep working on whatever the teacher has assigned for that day. But I just really feel like we need more intensive services for the tier 3. And when I'm talking about drugs and alcohol or pills, whatever, they are much stronger nowadays. And so we already know that, kids are starting these things at a younger age. And so we wouldn't necessarily need an IEP, but maybe SST that has a discipline plan or alternatives to some of their behavior or getting a referral to the social worker. I just really don't want to see these kids thrown away and, go to high school and then they're already set up for failure. And so that's why I plead with the board, to look for something that's more intensive for these students so that they can have a better chance when they reach high school and maybe go to college. And the empathy part, I don't know if everybody really understands what some of the kids are going through at home, who are experiencing this tier 3 intervention, and maybe just having a student who used to be, at a tier 3 and who is now successful, as a guest speaker to come in, and talk to the kids, to let them know this happened to me and this is what I had to do and this is how the school helped me. Because parents are entrusting us with their kids when, they go to school. And truthfully, that's where they're spending most of the day, probably, unless they're out all night. Because they're going to be at school for 6 or 7 hours. And that's more time than a parent probably spends with them. So if somebody can be working with them on site, I just think that it could maybe make a difference.
Thank you.
I'd just like maybe just some information on the suspension, the mandatory suspensions and what they were.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see how many were substance or something like that, because I do agree with Laverne that we need to maybe not suspend those kids because it might be something deeper going on. Better to intervene than.
Of the suspensions, none were for drugs and alcohol. One was for, there was an in-school suspension for, I actually don't want to talk specifically about that, so, but none were drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
Over half were for bodily harm to other individuals.
Okay.
And 2 were for a weapon or a knife.
Okay.
So there were 7 that were very serious in that way, and but none at this point were as a result of drugs or tobacco or vaping. Actually, that's not true. So there was one. There was one for tobacco, but none others. And but I do think we're going to meet with Mary Beer tomorrow, and there are alternatives in Pacifica for kids that have addictions. And at this point, we're not seeing them. We're not saying that they're not present or they haven't been present, but it hasn't been something that we have had yet this year. And we're just kind of in that kind of uncomfortable number of kids where it's really hard to put those numbers up because it's so identifiable. That's kind of our vagueness that we're, when we speak of it.
They covered everything.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, John.
I think there was a public comment on that one from
on school climate? Okay.
From Virginia. She's still in there?
That was a open communications earlier, and she did speak.
But she actually had 2. She wanted to speak to both of them, I think, in my...
Comments regarding concerns about safety at OSS site. Communication 9C, school climate update.
I don't see her on.
9D
is what she wrote.
Okay.
Do you want to?
But she's not still in there?
Let me look.
After the presentation.
Yeah.
I don't see her. Do you see her? Because she wrote 9C.
Okay.
Let's go time in is 9D. Yeah.
Okay. But she's not in there, you don't see her? Okay, very good. So what if we did the public comment for the enterprise? There's a public comment
Okay,
for...
Yes.
So item E, the enterprise copier contract. We'll do the public speaker first and then we'll
Okay.
do his presentation.
The public speaker is Kevin McCarthy.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me? Okay, beautiful. My name is Kevin McCarthy. I've been your public sector manager for the last a little over 5 years for MRC Xerox. And as managing your account, our team manages your account. Part of our account management process is we would regularly schedule quarterly review meetings with staff. And in that process, we use that to review the equipment, any concerns, billing or service concerns, and then also our recommendations. About 3 years ago this month, it was the end of November of 2018, we had a meeting with Nelson Sendino. We regularly met with him every quarter and presented a proposal to upgrade the district. And that proposal included the fleet upgrade with removal of some of the smaller devices, an optimized fleet. It had quite a bit of cost savings for it. And Nelson let us know that it was going to have to move forward sometime in the early of the spring of the next year. In about February of 2019, Nelson let us know it would have to be June before this could go forward. And in July of 2019, Nelson responded to an email letting us know that Digital Advisors, which was an outside consulting agency, had to approve our proposal at that point, and we couldn't go forward anymore. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is about 2.5 years ago, our relationship with the district seems to have changed. We regularly met with staff, and that has eroded. We've only had 2 meetings in the last 2.5 years. What we would like to request is that this item would be pulled off of the agenda. We have a significant amount of history of emails, proposals that we would like the board to consider. And we also provided a competitive proposal that was actually a better value for the district on a 24-hour turnaround last week that the board, I believe, has, that it came from our VP, Doug McPhee. We value our relationship with the district, and we really do look forward to an opportunity to have a valid opportunity to continue that. That's all I have. I know you've been here for quite a bit tonight. Enjoy your night. I look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Will Lucy, presentation on the enterprise copier contract?
Yes, thank you. So what I put in front of you is a recommendation for approval for a Conica Minolta enterprise contract. And just a little bit of a background, as I stated in the memo, Pacifica School District has been under several lease agreements at our school sites and district office. All of them have been 60-month fair market value lease agreements. They refer to as FMVs, and had different start dates, but have all have expired. Because they're FMVs, or fair market value leases, we continue to be charged monthly lease fees after the term of lease, meaning that we get charged for the machines on a monthly basis. Plus, we get charged the service contract or the service agreement. So that's continued. So with the goal of putting all of our copiers on one enterprise lease agreement that is cost savings compared to present rates, we are asking for approval on this Foundation of California Community College piggyback contract, which was attached with Conica Minolta, and a 60-month municipal lease agreement on 15 copiers, 2 copiers each site, including the district office, except for LMEC, which would receive 1. The muni lease is a lower rate than the fair market value that we have right now, and has a standard $1 out at the end of the term, meaning that after the 5 years and 60 months, we would own the copier, and we would not pay the monthly lease agreement for the copier, but we could continue to pay for the service contract on it, so which would cause a savings in that. Presently, just kind of give you some numbers, presently we're paying around, on average, $415 a month for a lease of copier machines, on average. The Conica Minolta contract would be $305, so that'd be $110 difference per month per copier. And then and then as far as the service agreement or the copies per price for our black and whites, for our black and white copies, we're presently paying 0.5 cents, so a half a cent per copy. And with the new agreement, we would be paying 0.35 cents a copy. So a third of a copy, a drop there. And then, yeah, okay. And then there's a lot of other numbers there that I kind of compared to what we're presently paying right now, and then what we would be paying. But generally speaking, we are still paying on a lease agreement on old copier machines, and you probably have heard that our copier machines are breaking all over the district, and they're being repaired per the lease agreement, but sometimes they're taking a long time to prepare. We had one school site that didn't have a working copier for a couple of weeks, and we had to make the copies here in district office and bring over the copies to them. We were very close to actually moving the machine from the district office over to that site because school sites need copier machines to be working, and they can't operate without them working. So I don't know if you have any questions, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes.
I just want to make a comment. So I actually remember when these Xerox printers came, and then 2 weeks later we had a repairman there over at Valmar School. And for years and years, there was only one person that really knew how to run those printers because they were so riddled with issues. So I actually think this is a great plan, and I'm not opposed to it at all.
I'm curious why I'm seeing two different proposals, at least in my email. It seems like we had another offer from another company.
So the gentleman that spoke is our current vendor. We are not considering that. We're considering an offer from Conica Minolta.
Okay.
So that's the one that's in front of you today.
Is the other proposal that just didn't come in time, or I'm just...
No, so when we sought out a new copier is we conferred with other districts to find out what copiers they were using and that they liked, kinds of service that they liked. So we didn't go far and wide in terms of what we were looking at, but after we let them know that we were changing, we were contacted by the Xerox representative asking to see if they could offer us, make an offer for us. And we compared the offers and feel like the Conica Minolta better meets our needs.
So what I'm hearing is that the printers or the copiers are breaking down, and it's become a crisis because you are going to move one copier to another school.
Yeah, right. One site it was at a crisis level, yes.
And then Linda, you said that the service isn't up to par or not what we need.
The old one, yeah.
So
in my opinion,
we will say we moved quickly because this has been an issue. I mean, honestly, in my, not this week, but the previous week, that was teachers' concern. It has been for weeks. We also know that IBL is, their copier is on its last legs. So at multiple sites, this is really a great need, and it's one of those things when we do talk about morale, if we can move as quickly as possible, it will just take that off of people's plate. So yes, perhaps we moved more quickly than we might have in another circumstance, but it was in order to make sure that our staff had what they need, but it's also a savings of what we're currently paying. And so in addition to an improved product for less money, it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, ideally, we thought we could go out and do a full enterprise RFP, but that would take months and months. There is savings, but we're already saving based on what we're currently paying. So in the future, I think maybe we could do that, but this was like kind of a post-pandemic, we're back at school, we don't have what we need, let's go.
Do you have any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve the enterprise copier contract?
I'll make a motion to approve the enterprise copier
Do I
contract.
have a second one?
I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, item 11, board bylaws, board policies and administrative regulations. Dr. Olson.
This is Dr. Olson, but Dr. Olson may ask for some help from Ms. Peterson.
Yes, I can present this item. Will, if you could please put up the AR attached to this item, it's the recommended AR.
And I gave you each a hard copy of the AR that indicates the minor changes that were, that we had in place. I don't know what I have.
Yes. So we are bringing this to you tonight as an action item, recommending that you adopt Board Policy 5141.43 and also approve the revision to AR 5141 and the renumbering as it is for the gamut system. And this policy is for the prevention of sexual misconduct and abuse in schools. As you know, all of our staff just completed the prevention of sexual misconduct and abuse in schools training. There were 3 online sessions that we had our staff complete, and I believe we were at either 99 or 100% completion rate last Friday. So one of the things that we did this year is with our insurance renewal, there is an additional deductible for abuse and molestation. And even though we already have these policies in place, and the changes that we're recommending tonight are very minor. I think you received the red line version. And the changes were very minor, just in wording and formatting. Our deductible is much more favorable if we adopt the SMIGSIG recommended version, which was reviewed by our county council and our insurance company. So we are recommending it to be an action item tonight for the board to approve this revised policy.
So I believe Ms. Peterson has maybe underestimated very favorable is that if we adopt these as both board policies and ARs that are based on our level of participation in the training, that our deductible would be 0 if we had a sexual assault and molestation case against us. If we don't choose to pass this, that our deductible would be $250,000 for the first incident.
And it's per incident, the deductible.
So we have to pass it.
Any more questions?
We don't have a choice.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding the adoption of 5141.43? Okay, do I have a motion to approve BP 5141.43?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, item 12, future agenda items.
Okay, I have on the big screen the future agenda items. Our December 1st meeting is going to be a very busy one. The required item in terms of timing is the certification of the first interim report. We thought we were going to have that in this meeting, but it actually just ended last Friday. So that's a big report. And then we would like to present the 6 single plans for student achievement. We hope to have those to you about the 18th of November so that you will have some time to go over them. We'll also try to highlight the changes. Remember, we did them last spring, just at the end of school, so they're not going to be hugely different, but I think it's important to get those out there. The other thing that we have is we just learned about an educator effectiveness grant that all districts are receiving. It requires 2 meetings that have to be approved by December 30th, so we need to bring that both to our December 1st and our December 15th meeting. And then we can also bring the dress and grooming policy and AR on December 1st.
Policy 5132.
Okay.
And regulation 5132.
Okay. And then what I would suggest for December 15th, that's our reorganization meeting. We have to have an election. It's an important one just in terms of getting all of the pieces right. So we try to keep that one just a little bit lighter in terms of the content. I would recommend in January, we're going to have the board work study meeting on January 12th. And then the following week, we have the meeting on January 19th. That's the meeting where I would recommend we look at fields, at some of the field issues that are coming up. Because at that time, we will have some sense of some of the monies that are available to us, and we will have some sense of the needs of our field. So we'll be able to compare what we currently spend and the condition of our field, and maybe kind of an idealized piece of information on that one.
Can we just have like another piece of information along with that is the environmental, like are we in a drought? How often can we water them if we're in a drought? You know, that kind of information.
And the other request that I would have is if possible to do in that meeting is also look at other open work order, you know, just what are the other kind of maintenance issues that the district is assessing in addition to fields, because fields would be one of potentially other areas.
So selfishly, one of the reasons why I bring this, I mean, I think it's a good time to talk about fields because certainly there's an interest, but as we met with the city of Pacifica, one of their council members suggested the opportunity to use a transit and occupancy tax that goes to people that use hotels in Pacifica, and that for the hotel owners that there's an interest in a possibility of some of that money going to fields, both City of Pacifica, and so that if we could hold soccer tournaments or other kinds of things, that it would be good for business and it would be good for our fields. And so we need to have that discussion. Are you okay with us having that discussion while you're not with us on the 19th?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. They feel like it's timely because it would be something that would have to get on the ballot, and I feel like that could be some of the assistance that we might need in that answer. So I would like to reserve that for the January 19th, and Elizabeth will not be with us, but
Is it the 12th or the 19th?
The 19th is our regular meeting. The 12th is the board work study. Yep. Elizabeth will be here for the board work study, but not for the
not for the week after that.
And President Doggett will be chairing that meeting. Excuse me, if there is an election.
Only if I get your votes.
Right, exactly. I hesitate to say anything else, but my pen is still here. Anything else?
Can't wait till February.
Very good. It's going to be a busy couple of months, but thank you very much for your engagement today.
Okay. All right, we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:03 p.m.
Do we have anything to sign today?